Meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Public comment. Do we have any public comment? No public comment today. Approval of the September 3rd, 2025 Health and Human Services Committee meeting minutes and August 6th, 2025 Joint Health and Human Services Committee and Public Safety Committee meeting minutes. Motion made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Operational function required by statute, ordinance, resolution, or policy. 2026 CDBG program funding application, and I will turn it over to Administrator Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is something you probably haven't seen before because I hadn't seen it before. For a little bit of background, Marathon County is part of a regional, what I'll say is a consortium essentially, relative to the distribution of community development block grant funds. So block grant funds that people are more familiar with are normally through metropolitan areas, designated metropolitan areas. So the city of Wausau has community development block grant dollars that they use to address various housing and housing related issues. But again, counties actually do have the ability to participate in a consortium or a region in the state of Wisconsin. And we are part of the central housing region, includes Adams, Green Lake, Juneau, Marathon, Marquette, Portage, Wapaka, and Waushara and Wood. And that consortium undertakes some housing related activities throughout all of the counties and distributes funds that are provided to them through the federal government. It is required by the consortium program that every 2 years, I believe, they are required to submit an application for continued funding. So they are making the rounds to each of the member counties to have resolutions continuing membership. Again, I had not seen this before. I don't think we've done it. The last time was 2018, I think. So we're freshening up our membership. For, again, additional background, we do have a supervisor that is appointed to serve on that regional consortium program board. And that had been Supervisor Unger. However, recently Supervisor Endress was appointed to that board. So happy to answer any easy questions you may have because my knowledge on this is not overly deep. But that's kind of the background for why it's before you. And that is not a comment on my speech, the alarm for someone using the wrong door.
Questions for the Administrator? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Administrator Leonard, do you know what the county's role is in this program?
It really is just to be a member of the consortium and then to appoint a board member who attends the meetings and provides guidance relative to any questions that or policy issues that would come before it. As I understand it, the distribution of these dollars that we receive, these community development block grant dollars, are fairly regimented in how they're handed out, but there are things like homeowner assistance for various repairs. More commonly within this region, my understanding is if you're a landlord, you can apply for funding to do some rehabilitation on the properties that you own. The individuals that would qualify for this funding, there are certain qualifying characteristics that you need to have. I think income and who you serve if you are a landlord is part of that as well. There's a website if you do search for the Central Wisconsin Housing Region Community Development Block Grant. You can see and people can apply for those funds, but they're administered, I believe, out of Juneau County.
I think in discussions and being on the board for McDevco CDBG grants, McDevco also uses CDBG through the city. Is that correct or not?
I don't know if McDevco uses them, but the city gets they get a different source of funding relative to their block grant program because they are designated as a metropolitan area at the federal
Okay.
level.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Happen to have any idea how much this is used? Do the people that need it here in Wausau know about it?
I actually reached out to the block grant people probably 6 months ago to kind of ask how are there ways we can drive more utilization within the county. I don't have data with me. I can ask them to provide that on how much of the funds are utilized in Marathon County as opposed to the other member counties and what education resources they have available. Historically, we've had, when individuals have reached out, there is the website or there's a brochure that we've handed out when people are looking for it. My understanding is fairly limited, but I can get that information for you.
Go ahead.
Is it a use it or lose it type situation with the grant? Or is there a certain dollar amount?
It's not a grant that goes to the county. This is really a resolution to authorize the county to be part of a region. And the Marathon County is in the central housing region with the counties I read off before. Every county in the state of Wisconsin is part of a region. Dane County is its own, as I believe Waukesha and Milwaukee counties are also designated as entitlement areas based on their size. So this isn't to accept a grant, it's really to cooperate in the submission of the application for funds. And if we're not part of a consortium, I don't believe we would have access to those funds. Or I should say our residents wouldn't have access to those funds.
Anything further from the committee? I'd entertain a motion at this point.
Make a motion to forward it to the county board for approval.
Motion to approve, a second with Supervisor Cavelli. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 5B, discussion and possible action by Health and Human Services Committee, overview of the highlights of the 2026 annual budget with respect to the departments and organizations over which the committee has jurisdiction. I'll turn it over again to Administrator Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a little bit of background. I know we've talked about the development of the budget. Well, it was presented yesterday and it was accepted by the Human Resources and Finance Property Committee. So it is no longer the administrator's budget, it's now the county board's budget and specifically under the jurisdiction of the committee that I'm sure Chair Robinson from not Health and Human Services, HR, Finance and Property will talk more about in just a bit. That said, if you go to the website, you can peruse the 190-page document at your leisure. I'm not going to go through in detail as I did yesterday. I think we took about an hour and 45 minutes to go through the budget. I just want to highlight a couple of key points as it relates to each of the departments over which this committee has provided jurisdiction and highlight a couple of things. But in terms of layout of the document, it's consistent with previous years. So when you go on the website and are navigating it, you can get it begins with an overview of the change in tax rate, the change in levy, the average homeowner impact, all those things that I think speak really directly to the board and primarily residents, because every resident of the county, what's the thing they look at? What does this mean for me? And we have a nice right up there that talks about what is the average homeowner impact. So on that $253,000 house, which is the average house in the county, your county tax bill is about $880, so less than $80 a month. Over the last 2 years, the tax bill has increased on that average home 3.95%. And it actually went down last year, the average tax bill, because of the board action to buy the levy rate down with reserves. So over 2 years, the average is less than 2% a year. So speaks very highly to, again, the leadership of the county board to, as a board, to keep an eye on that fiscal growth of the budget. But really today, the thing I wanted to do is take some time just to talk through what does it mean for the departments that you've been hearing from based on your reporting structure, and a bit of the process of the budget. So as I've talked through the process before, this is really now formally it's the county board's budget, but to be very clear, it's been the board's budget from the minute we started developing it. We got a lot of guidance through the budget priorities, the budget assumptions, all of the discussions we've had at the committee levels to build it. So from the outset and throughout, and if you watch my presentation yesterday, and I'll send a link out to all the county board members, both to the budget and the recording, it really has been the board's budget. At every stage, we've followed through on the directives we've been given and followed those priorities to enact them. The biggest one across the board that I'll say drove a lot of our work, the number one budget priority that was identified by the board was implementing the compensation update. I won't belabor that point, but it is absolutely critical. Our department heads understood that, and we did a lot of work to implement that, and I'm very happy to say the budget does that. But really on all of the other remaining, you had 5 total budget priorities you identified through your budget priority resolution. We followed and delivered on all of those. Similarly, with all the budget assumptions, we adopted all of the budget assumptions into our fiscal projections. So what does that mean in terms of the budget for your respective departments? I'll start with what really drove, again, the formation of that budget, implementing that wage study. The theme I used yesterday was shared sacrifice. Department heads did a great job. We really, from the finance director, the HR director, all of the administrative staff, but then all of your department heads and the staff within the departments, we left no stone unturned. We defunded approximately 15 positions across the county. We did have some new allocated positions that went through the process, but again, across the board, the net impact is we are funding about 15 fewer positions than we did last year. So all of the departments really stepped up to the plate. I'll start with the health department. That is a department where we actually had 2 positions that were effectively not funded as part of the 2026 budget development. One of them, however, was the funding from that position was reallocated to allow for the new position that this committee recommended and ultimately was approved by the HR, Finance, and Property Committee to include in the budget, and that was a new position related to addressing homelessness, that public health coordinator position. So that is in the budget. Similarly, in the budget is the other directive this committee gave, which was to provide ongoing funding for the provision of emergency shelter services in the county in partnering with the city. That's in the budget. But as it relates to the health department, this is really instructive as it relates to all of the departments, but their department really sought to make sure we're aligning funding streams for our programs with the work of staff to really minimize the need to utilize levy for that funding, and they did a great job, as did some of the other departments I'll talk about in a minute. And that really helped the budget overall. Ultimately, the health department, despite implementing the wage study and having that homelessness coordinator position, overall, their budget came in lower than last year. And you'll see that in some of the final pages of the budget. We have an appendix that shows the year-over-year change for departments. So funded an increase in wages. The health department funded their internal increase in wages, the increase in health insurance, the increases in Wisconsin retirement system, the increases for service contracts that we have, because I think all of you understand that We've seen inflation in a lot of places. The contracts we used to have cost more. The things we need to buy cost more. Despite all of those challenges, the health department was able to present a budget that was down slightly from 2025. So that's an overview there. I wouldn't say that there were any, and this is true across the board for our budget, there weren't any substantive changes other than those couple that I've mentioned, as well as the minimum revenue guarantee program at the airport. There aren't any substantively new programs. There are some modifications we made, but nothing that I think was substantial in terms of, hey, we're going from a service level, we're dropping a service level that is going to be meaningfully noticeable to the residents. But again, across the board, departments really stepped up to the plate. So that's an overview of, I would say, at the health department. One area where we really did a nice job within the health department of aligning our work to the fees is within environmental health. That is a program, so if you think about like restaurant inspections and other facility inspections where there are licenses, we tie the license cost to the services we deliver. That's why when we do the fee schedule, which is in the appendix in your budget again this year, there were those increases that the board directed us to look at. Increase the fees we charge for those sort of programs consistent with our cost to deliver them. They really did a nice job of going in, looking at those fees and aligning work to those areas where we have that reimbursement. The other thing I will say that I'll highlight, and there are department pages, so if you want to follow up on the health department, I'll just show you. You can navigate through the document. We have data talking about things, like I said, licenses issued, tuberculosis, cases managed. We have an org chart for every department, and then highlights from 25 and 20, and then things to look forward to in 26. I would say as it relates to looking forward to 26, a good example of some of the efficiency efforts that were undertaken within environmental health, we're piloting a transition of how we collaborate between our lab, our water testing lab, and environmental health work. Again, allowed us to be a little bit more efficient and cost effective. So we're going to see how that goes in terms of aligning resources. But all of the things that really those programs looking ahead to 26, each department highlights just a couple of things. Not everything they're doing, of course, but just a couple of things on the horizon. So that may help you as you review the budget document and try to understand impact. So the next department that I'll go through that reports to this committee, social services. So again, their department organized a similar fashion with mission and overview at the front, as well as data for some key programs within each department overview. Want to give a shout out to our data officer. So if you go back and look at some budgets from 2019, that document in 2019 was like 24 pages long. Your budget now is 190 pages. Now, not to say that just a longer budget's a better budget, but I think the current budgets are more transparent, much more informative, and one of the areas where we're more informative is data. There was no real data for programs in the 2019-2020 budgets. We've made a substantive effort to include that. So social services, highlights on some of their budget and some of the modifications I made to it. They too, when you look at their overall number for the final budget, they came in flat. And I'll talk about why that is important in just a minute, but across your departments, 17 of the departments and entities that you provide funding through the budget, 17 of 26 came in flat or below their 2025 budgets. So quite the feat. And again, all those same pressures that I talked about before exist. So social services, what are some highlights in terms of budget adjustments I had to make? We defunded a position for half the year within social services. So again, that idea of shared sacrifice. Want to give a big shout out again to some efficiency measures. They have sought again to align funding to the work that we're doing, but taking things in-house. When I talk about contracts for services, the pressures we've seen, you either can't find vendors or contractors to deliver the services, or the cost to do it has gone up substantially. So social services has, over the last several years, taken a number of programs in-house that we used to do externally. The Youth Opportunity Center was one, intensive supervision services you've heard about. This year, we're taking in, as a pilot, family visitation services, so that should come at a financial savings. We're going to evaluate that throughout the year and make those determinations. But across, this is probably the biggest budget adjustment I made, was in the social services department. One of the core duties we have, those mandated services that you're all very familiar with, one of the core things we have to do is child protection and youth justice within social services and court-ordered placements. So when kids need to be placed out of home, so you can recall Family Keys and how that was one of those tools, one of those strategies we have to mitigate the need to place children out of home. But where we need to, where courts order it, we have to provide those out-of-home placements. The out-of-home placement budget for social services is a slight increase over last year, $79,000. But to get to that point, I reduced the placement budget in social services by more than $500,000. Their total budget for placements is about $5.86 million in 26. But you'll see the cost of those placements. The most expensive placement we have, a level 5 treatment foster care placement for a year, is north of $585,000. Institutional care placements over $330,000. So really, really exceedingly expensive and difficult to budget for, because if you budget for one and you end up with two and the cost is $500,000, you have a significant challenge. So Krista and her team did very well to bring forward a very reasonable budget and projections for all of these placements. And I cut those very reasonable projections by $500,000 to balance the budget. You might ask, well, you might say that seems like a bad idea. You might not be wrong. We'll see. I'm at least reasonably confident that it'll work out for two reasons. One, I know our staff do a very exceptional job maintaining children in the least restrictive placement possible. And two, we implemented that high-cost placement reserve last year where we have $400,000. So I cut more than the value of the high-cost placement reserve, but we'll evaluate throughout the year to continue to see where that budget is and how we're trending. But that was a significant adjustment that was made to balance the budget. So that's a highlight from the social services standpoint. Again, a great job on their budget overall, coming in flat. Made a lot of minor modifications to get there, but just wanted to highlight that larger modification. In terms of your next department, Veterans Department, so I go from the second largest county department at social services to the strong but mighty but small Veteran Service Department. Aaron's here today. Department of, at least currently, 2.75 FTE. But in 26, that is being expanded. We're adding one position. We're taking the 0.75 to a 1.0 position. I explained why in the budget. The short answer is we have more veterans that require services and some more programs that they're eligible for in terms of funding, particularly families, spouses, surviving spouses. So in light of that, we're expanding that position to a 1.0 position. Overall, the veterans budget is up just slightly, and again, that's due to expanding that position. They're up $9,150, which doesn't sound like much, and it's not much, but I said before, small and mighty department, their budget's small. They don't have, Aaron and his team don't have a lot of flexibility in that budget, but they presented a very strong budget. Didn't really make any modifications to it. Not anything substantive, at least. But the budget highlight for them really is expanding that position to undertake some additional services relative to providing services to veterans and their families. They've done a great job. There's a lot of data that we've added relative to the work that that department is doing. You'll see the increases that we've seen from the number of office visits and from the number of claims submitted and appeals. So there really is a need to expand that staff, even if it's just by a 0.25. Aaron's relatively new in his position, been with the Veterans Office now for a bit longer. He was the assistant for a while, worked with the county for much longer in the sheriff's office. They've really done well to continue to expand that outreach, and you can see the financial impact why these services are so important. Just in 2025, through working, Aaron and his team working with veterans, $3.52 million in retroactive pay was, or paid compensation, I should say, was provided to veterans. That's in addition to the $44 million that veterans are receiving on a recurring basis based on claims and eligibility determinations that have made their way through the system. So really an important department to assisting veterans and their families get their very well-deserved and earned benefits. Moving forward, again, trying to find a more focused way to reach out to surviving spouses, particularly with the number of veterans that we have that are based on their age and their service era that are passing away. So credit to Aaron and his team for bringing that forward, and that is built into the budget. So the other part with that 0.25 position, I will say, is I think it gives us a bit more flexibility in an area where we don't have it, and that is bench strength across departments to be able to assist. This employee has assisted in other departments in the past on some projects. She's helped out in the DA's office and other departments, so really has a good understanding of the work we do in the county. So having that additional bandwidth, should we need it, is important. The other departments I want to talk about are a bit more unique. I shouldn't say a bit more unique. They're a little bit different than the traditional solely Marathon County department. And that's going to be North Central Healthcare and the Aging Disability Resource Center. Again, as background, those are multi-county entities. We'll start with the Aging Disability Resource Center. Serves Marathon, Lincoln, Langlade, and Wood County. In terms of their budget for comparison between 2025 and 26, they too are flat, coming in with no increase. They're governed by an independent board, so they are making their own adjustments to the budget. But again, they funded the increase in wages, increases in health insurance, increase in WRS, all of those things, while at the same time having significant pressures on costs of things like food. Meals on Wheels is one of their core programs, and you'll see a lot of the data in this budget relates to Meals on Wheels. The costs of food have increased, so the cost of delivering that service to the people of Marathon County and of those other member counties has increased. The big changes relative to ADRC, similar to veterans that I didn't mention, is that in 2025 they did relocate their campus, I should say, from Stewart Avenue to the Lakeview campus, which is a positive for the ADRC. It's saving them revenue, saving them money in terms of their expenditures for rent. They were paying, quite simply, they were paying more in their previous space. than they are in the current space. The current space also is much more accessible for individuals with disabilities. It's first floor entry as opposed to going down some steps or down an elevator into the basement. It's also on a bus line, which is great. Benefit also to the county. We're getting that rent revenue. It's staying quote unquote in the family. So we give the levy allocation. They pay us rent. They deliver the services. All around, it's working very, very well. So when they look forward to 2026, I would just say one of the things they need to do is, and Mike is doing a great job, their programming and their funding at the state and federal level is not growing at the level it needs to continue to deliver those services. So strategic planning and continued fiscal efforts to have those strategies in place to make sure that they're being as efficient as possible within those funding constraints is a significant part of Mike's plan for 26, and they've really done a nice job. One of the things we're looking at is continuing to partner now that they're on campus, and how can we be more collaborative in a way that can quite honestly save the ADRC and the county directly funding. So that's an overview for ADRC. Again, brought in a budget that is flat relative to their 2025 budget. Then I'll go to North Central Healthcare. Again, a lot of data in their budget. Similarly, our multi-county organization, Lincoln Langlade Marathon. The primary campus, of course, is down at our Lakeview Drive campus. A lot of facility renovations there. Not only do they deliver the mental health services required under Chapter 51 of the Wisconsin statutes by statute that counties are obligated to deliver, but also on behalf of Marathon County, they operate the nursing home that Marathon County has, that's Mount View Care Center. So their budget relative to 2025 was also flat. So managing all of the things I just talked about, they too funded a compensation update. They were having a lot of the same challenges, and in some areas, greater challenges than we were having. And I think in some areas we might have been having more challenge than they were. But they have some positions, clinical positions, where that compensation structure looks a little bit different, but the pressures are all the same. And nevertheless, they implemented that compensation update, managed to deal with the increased costs for service delivery and goods and other things we're seeing in the market with a flat budget. In terms of additional services or ongoing highlights for 2026, you'll see there's a lot of data in their budget. They do a very nice job really tying their budget to census. In a lot of respects, I'll pick the nursing home, for example, but the same is true for adult behavioral health and medically monitored treatment, outpatient, what have you. Really tying productivity or census, how many people are using the services, to your budget is vitally important, because while they get tax levy, and the tax levy for North Central Healthcare, I told you, is flat, but the overall tax levy for North Central Healthcare is about $5.86 million. Their overall budget is well in advance of that. I'm not going to put Vicki on the spot if she remembers off the top of her head, but I want to say it's like 80 plus, right? 80 million? 95 million. So a lot of outside revenue. So they really need to have a good handle on what their census is and how they're trending. The nursing home, I know they check on a daily basis. What's our census? Can we have additional admits? Do we have sufficient staff? So you'll see their budget has, the pages in our budget that relate to their budget have a lot of data. If you want additional information on their budget, we do have a link in our budget document to the full North Central Healthcare budget. So you can read that document as well. But continuing to deliver those services, one of the pieces they have, similar to ADRC and quite honestly all of the county departments, but somewhat nuanced, are the fiscal or the financial challenges. If you think to earlier this year, the federal legislation, Big Beautiful Bill, has a lot of impacts on Medicaid funding and when are those going to hit. The same is true for social services. You know, in social services, we're going to have increased eligibility determinations that we need to do based on that legislation. So more work without more money to come from that. So essentially an unfunded mandate. The flip side, North Central Healthcare, we don't turn people away when they don't have insurance or even Badger Care if they're not on it, right? So, and they're going to be probably, what everyone's anticipating is fewer people qualifying for Badger Care come 2027. So trying to chart out what are those impacts going to look like across all the programs is really going to be a big part of 26. I mean, if anyone really knew, we would just copy and paste what their plan was. But I sat through North Central's audit. I'm on their executive committee and on their board. I mean, the auditors gave us the same advice. Like, there's a lot still we don't know. And understanding that and setting those reasonable census targets in light of those reimbursements, but at the same time, the other pressure that they have, they're a 24/7 operation in a lot of their departments, similar to what we have in the jail, one of our most challenging places to retain and recruit staff. They have that in the adult behavioral health, nursing home, a number of their programs. So it's not only the financial challenges where the reimbursements lie, but it's, do you have the staff to deliver the service and how do you align with the market? And I'll end with my market comment, why the implementation of the wage study was vitally important. I have a section in the budget that talks about compensation and employment. So let me go there. This unemployment rate across the state in 2024 was 3%. It went up slightly from 2.9%, and it was 2.9% in 22. It went up to 3% in 23. 2.9% was the lowest on record. Marathon County and our situation locally is even more challenging than the state. Our rate in 24 is 2.6. With the difference between 2.6 and 3% might not sound like a lot, but it's a lot. I mean, that's how math works, right? Like, when your number's not big, those percentages matter, even those tenths of a percent. The reality is that North Central Wisconsin is more competitive, particularly Marathon County is more competitive than the state. 2.6%. So when you think about North Central Healthcare and their 24/7 operations relative to kind of that are health related, think about who our employers are here. We are very fortunate that we have large health systems that are here locally. That said, it presents a challenge for operations, positions like social workers, positions like CNAs, nurses, clinicians. The same is true for us with 24/7 operations in the jail and really all of our positions. This is just a competitive area. So again, staff were really up to the task in putting together this budget as it related to your priorities and first and foremost, getting that wage study implemented. So they did a real great job. So in closing, I know the Chair Robinson from HR Finance and Property wants to talk timeline. I will just say this. And I said this at HR Finance yesterday, the board still absolutely has it's your budget, you can make modifications and there are areas to do it. My only ask is this. It was said last year at the budget presentation in your deliberations, a supervisor remarked that using reserves to buy down the tax rate was not sustainable. I would echo that. I would strongly advise that you not look to do that. Just to reinforce, you had $0 that came over for capital expenditures this year because of our use of reserves over the last the loan to Bug Tussle, and then the use of reserves as part of the 2025 budget. We funded 5 million, just shy of $5 million worth of capital in the budget that was proposed and accepted by the HR Finance and Property Committee, but that belt is tight. If you make modifications to the budget, and you absolutely can, my only ask is take those funds and put them towards the projects that we deferred. We had $10 million of projects on the capital request docket, our 5-year capital plan. We had 10 million for 2026. We deferred about half. We put off. We funded the most critical, truly critical things. We funded critical IT security and critical IT infrastructure, and we funded road projects. We funded road projects because you need to maintain your road spending to maintain and protect your transportation aids. That's, when you look at the capital budget, it's at the end of the budget in one of the appendices. That's what we funded. We put off a lot. If the board makes changes and finds additional revenue, whether you project more revenue or decrease expenditures somewhere, my ask is for fiscal responsibility, please put those dollars into those other projects. Otherwise, we're going to be in a more challenging place next year. And the board's second budget priority was to not use general fund reserves. They weren't used in the county budget, but also coinciding with that is no bonding. We didn't want to bond. The best way to avoid bonding, and I still have some work to do on this, but we've started to put together a plan to how to finance the highway department. If you make more utilization, I should say, of your existing general obligation debt, and there's a whole section in the budget about it. If you make utilization of that general obligation debt, particularly the part that North Central is servicing, they're giving you in 26, $3 million to pay debt that the county already went out, bonded for it, and we pay interest on it, and we're paying it off with North Central's cash. If you flip that and you put that debt service on debt levy as you're statutorily able to do, take the cash from North Central to pay for the highway shop, you avoid all of the bonding costs that might be needed for the highway shop construction, and you avoid all the interest. And you bonded at a really good time for a lot of the North Central projects. A fair amount of that borrowing was done with interest rates between 1% and 2%, some between 3% and 4%. You're not going to do better than that if you go out to bond right now. Interest rates are going to be higher than that. And those interest rates, when you think about what does that mean for borrowing, I gave this information to HR Finance yesterday, but if you go borrow conservative estimate and round numbers, because I like both, you have $30 million the board just allocated for the highway shop last month. Let's say that shop costs $50 million. That is not unreasonable. That's a pretty conservative number. So you have $20 million. You need to, let's talk about the cost to borrow for that. If you get 3% as an interest rate, the interest alone on that $20 million over 20 years is $6.89 million. If you get 4%, it's $9.43 million. And 5%, it's over $12 million. So we have an opportunity to save the taxpayers a great deal of money should the board want to move forward with the project, and we do it in a way where we take advantage of the already existing bonding that's been done. But to do that, we just need to be strategic and follow through on that strategy. And if we take new revenues or project higher revenues, I should say, or decrease expenditures and take more off the debt levy to drive the debt levy down, we're just setting up a situation where those deferred maintenance costs either require bonding, and ultimately the taxpayer pays more. So the budget before you is balanced. a lot of opportunity. Should you want to make some modifications, happy to talk through with you what those might look like if you're interested in making a budget amendment resolution. But with that, I'll kick it over to Chair Robinson to talk timeline.
Thank you. I want to thank the administrator and all of the department heads for their work on the budget. It's a tight budget, and I think maintains our priorities and our service level in these tough times. But, you know, we started the budget with the priorities and the assumptions which we took to the county board early summer. And we've been working with the committees over the last few months. I think some of you are sick of seeing me and perhaps others, but we did receive the feedback for the homeless coordinator and others that were built in, and trying to establish the priorities. At the last meeting, you received from administration, and particularly from Samantha Fensky, our finance director, the fund balance policy that goes through and explains where we are with the social improvement fund, the general fund, and the other funds. We ask that you take a good look at that, but all of those were used in the development of the budget that was presented yesterday and accepted, and as the administrator said, it's now our budget. And there are a few opportunities for us as county board members to influence that, and ultimately the final decision will be made on November 11th when we adopt it. But we have the opportunity between now and October 13th, when the HR Finance and Property Committee will authorize it for the budget for publication. That's what we'll take out to the press, and the public will then look at that budget, but we can amend it at that time. Then the budget is frozen until we have the public hearing on the budget. You can offer amendments, we can't change the numbers between the date of publication and the public hearing. After the public hearing, we would ask that committees again take a good look at it, make recommendations. The Finance Committee will consider those on November 10th, with the county board taking them up on the 11th. And you know, we've got a tight budget, a responsible budget, but a budget that is dynamic and can change. So if you've got some thoughts, please bring them forward as soon as possible, and we can consider those and look at how to build those into the budget.
So I think if you have any questions, Mr. Chair.
That was way more brief than you, Lance. Way better. Questions for either one of the guys? Just because of that great discussion. Yeah.
If you're interested, the tax rate went down 4.6, more than 4.6%. So that's the first line of the budget. We lead with the good stuff.
All right, well, we'll move on to 5C, discussion and possible action by, quick question, John. What was the actual vote? Was it an unanimous vote to pass it? Yeah, it was unanimous. I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Yes, it was.
And everyone was in attendance?
One member was not.
Okay, which supervisor was not? It's public record.
Reynolds, but he had, because we moved it to one, he had the
Well, I
committee.
just was wondering, okay. All right, perfect, thank you. All right, with that, we'll C, discussion and possible action by Health and Human Services Committee to forward to a county board for consideration. Anything by the body? Nope, all right. 6, education presentation committee discussion. I guess at this point, Lance, I'll turn it over to you to announce something.
Yeah, I have an announcement. So I think, as was alluded to before, they're probably your meetings you're sick and tired of hearing from me. I saw Chair Robinson look in my direction when he made that comment. But we do have a new face in the room today. I'm very pleased to announce that our new health officer, Caitlin Suganaka, it's her second day, so she knows all of the things. Third day, sorry, I forgot it's Wednesday. I forgot the budget day. I just wiped it from my mind. But Caitlin started this week. She comes with 15 years of experience in public health, has worked in Eau Claire. They have a joint city-county health department, worked in state of Minnesota and done consulting work. She also was a lecturer at UW, so really excited to have her and her experience here. She has a master's in public health and is actually loves school so much she's getting her doctorate. But excited to welcome her to the team, and I would like to give her a round of applause, but I also want to take full advantage of the opportunity to thank Amanda for her work serving as an interim. She has been truly exceptional to work with. Very happy that, of course, I'm sure she's happy to no longer have to deal quite as much with me, but did a great job on the budget. She has really, I mean, I couldn't have asked for anything more in terms of the leadership we've had during her tenure. Has done a great job. So a round of applause for both would be greatly appreciated. And I'm sure Amanda has already handed off the on-call cell phone to. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. 7, next meeting date and time announcements, future agenda items. 7A, committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion. As always, next meeting is Wednesday, November 5th, 2025 at 3 p.m. And with that, I'll take number 8. Motion to adjourn. Do we have a second? Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everyone.